All right, I am here, ready to talk to you if you are here. I'm Jim Harrison, essential oil expert, strategist. Been doing it for 20 years. Been an educator, been a plant-based skincare formulator, and I have done pretty much almost everything you can possibly do in aromatherapy and in essential oils. And I just want to bring that information to you, the things that I've learned, the things that I do, and the things that work. So today, we're going to talk about my Holistic Essential Oil Triad, which is a system I developed in understanding what essential oils are, what they do, and how they actually work, instead of this segmented way that most people are familiar with essential oils. And so the Holistic Essential Oil Triad brings a bigger dimension that we can understand. So I introduced you to that in part one. And what I'm going to do today is explain how you can use the Holistic Essential Oil Triad in wellness treatments. So let me bring up my slide for you. Here we go. Let me get rid of this guy. We don't need him. Okay. Holistic Essential Oil Triad, creating effective wellness treatments. That's going to be our conversation today. And what I'll do is, first of all, I'll review what the triad is, the Holistic Essential Oil Triad. That's its full name. And the way I developed this is I found that, I mentioned this just a minute ago, that most people segment how they use essential oils. There's emotion, there's physical, and then maybe for, pressure points or marmas or chi flow or chakras, there's energetics. Now, as I've been working with essential oils and developing systems and using them in all aspect in the ways that you could possibly use essential oils, I found that you can't separate these things. So what the Holistic Essential Oil Triad is, it's a way of understanding essential oils from the olfactory response. That's the science of smell. So it's not emotional. I mean, I wrote emotional there, but that's generally how we think of it. But it's not emotional. It's also physical. You get physical responses through the olfactory system. So there's nervous system function and other things. I'll explain that a little bit more too. Pharmacological, which basically I'm taking that word out of the pharmaceutical industry, but pharmacological just refers to the physical activity of the oils. And then metaphysical, which is really, I don't know. It's my I don't know category, because we don't always understand why an essential oil worked. And we just stick that into an I don't know category. Now, I don't know can also go into physical. It can also go into olfactory science. But energetically, there are things that we really can't understand. Frequencies, energetics, chi flow, chakra balance. These are the things that fall under the metaphysical properties of essential oils. Now, what we're going to be doing is taking this system and showing you how to apply this into your wellness work. Step one. Always have to have a step one, don't we? What we want to do is we want to identify what your primary need is. All right. So again, I'm going to keep reviewing what the triad is. Okay. In case you missed that, haven't read about it, I'm going to keep referring back to it. What your primary need is your goal. Okay. So anytime you have a treatment that you're doing, whether it's in your practice, whether for yourself, whether for your family, friends, doesn't matter. There's always, what do you want the end result to be? It's your GPS, right? It's going to guide everything you're going to do. So your GPS is telling you that I need to have this result. So you know where you're heading now. And that's your primary need. But we also have to understand beyond symptom management, which is that first bullet there. First, the symptom is generally what your goal is. Have headaches. Okay, that's your primary need, is to reduce a headache. Stress, reduce stress. These are the listing of things that you're doing your treatments for. If you're in spa and aesthetics, there's so many different issues in skin, and you need to resolve those, especially if you're working on a client. It's what I'm going to be teaching you is how to go beyond symptom management, but your end result still has to be that you solved the issue that your client came in for or that you were wanting to resolve. That's what symptom management is. Symptom management is good because it should resolve what you're trying to do, but symptom management isn't the full solution. And this is what holistic is about. We understand this, right? We know what holistic is. You're not treating, just symptom, you're treating the whole person. And I always talk about this. What does holistic mean? I wrote an article years ago for Skin Inc. magazine, and the title was How Whole is Holistic? Quick answer to that is that it's infinite. You're never finished finding what the causes are, what's going on. Why does this person have a headache? Why does this person have atopic dermatitis, right? You need to have a bigger picture in order for you to know what to treat. So this is where I've developed outside, inside out method. And I didn't really develop it because it's what, we're familiar with it. It's what we all use, except that it tends to be a little more limited in definition. So when I say holistic is infinite, that's really what I mean. And if we take a typical definition of holistic, if I ask you, and if I could hear your response, what is holistic? What does that mean? And generally what we're going to get is it's mind, body, spirit. Yeah, that covers mind, body, spirit, but it's not your infinite holistic goal. Because when we think of mind, what are you thinking about? Emotion, right? If you think about body, it's atopic dermatitis, like I just mentioned. The headache probably goes under body, even though it can go a little bit under mind, but it's a physical thing. We need to take care of it. Spirit is, I don't know, define spirit for me. That is a really tough category to define. And I'm big on definitions. My classes always start with defining the language that I'm going to be using. And this is, as a therapist, this is what you should be doing. You should be defining the words that you're going to be using, because you could be saying something like mind, body, spirit. And your client could be sitting there going, I don't know. I never read that book. I don't know what you're talking about. So we need to be on the same page. And this is an important piece because this also gets into what we call intention. The intention of what you're trying to do needs to be well defined, kind of like what your primary need is. What's the goal? It needs to be defined. So the outside, inside out method is what we've been talking about for holistic mind, body, spirit. And also in the beauty industry, in spa, we call it beauty inside out. I find that limiting. Beauty inside out is very limiting. And this is why I've just taken it and just added another word. When we're talking about what the primary need is or the symptom, what are the causes? And in order to find out what the root trigger is, and there are probably many roots to what's going on here, in order to find that information, you need to really understand the person. So when we talk about symptom management, the thing I always say, and you've heard this from me before, if you've ever heard me talk, you're not treating the symptom, you're treating the person with the symptom. It's always about the person with the symptom that you're dealing with. So the outside, inside out method, it further defines who that person is. So here's what, again, I'm not saying anything new, but I'm making sure that we're very clear about what we're talking about here. So when I say outside, what's going on externally in that person's life? Could be a relationship, could be a work environment. There could be pollutants in the air, electromagnetic frequencies. I mean, everybody has an environment that we're dealing with, including weather and allergens and things like that. But we all respond differently to what's outside. Okay. So what we're looking at is outside. But then what we need to know is, how is that person internalizing it? Okay. This is, I might be repeating a few things, but I just wanted to go over some of the ways that I'm going to be addressing the treatments themselves. So on the outside, you have the information. Two people exposed to the same thing. One person internalizes that, and it raises their stress levels and it raises their blood pressure. Another person exposed to the same environment, and I'm kind of thinking about what in an office, right? A boss that's very intense. One person responds with stress, anxiety, heart pressure, high blood pressure. The other person is just cool and, takes that intensity in and just lets it flow, is not physically or emotionally affected at all. This is with everything. We need to understand the outside. What is it this person is dealing with externally, and how are they internalizing that information? This is so important. And then the next thing, so we've got outside, what's happening out here. We got inside, how are you internalizing it? And then out again. And this is what you're seeing as a symptom. The atopic dermatitis could be due to an intense boss. And in your treatment, you're taking care of the surface, and it's working until the person deals with that intense boss again. In a treatment, what I want to show you is how to use the Holistic Essential Oil Triad and this outside-inside method of understanding the person, so that what you're doing is you're doing a treatment, and this is where should get into retail. I mean, that's a class in its own, how I could teach you how to retail products so that you continue your treatment ongoing, right? And so you have the skincare that you've used in your practice for atopic dermatitis, and it's working, and you give them the skincare to use at home, and it'll work, but it's going to be fighting against that external environment this person's dealing with. So what you want to do is you want to add a little extra sauce to your skincare so that it helps the person to deal with that external environment. Essential oils are beautiful at that. This is where getting into personalization is such an ideal practice, okay? And in a way, I'm going to show you that, but I'm also showing you can make formulas that kind of work for a group here, and then a different formula for this group and that group. So there are ways to kind of expand that to retail products that aren't so personalized. So here's your step 2. Okay, so first thing is you're finding out what your goal is, along with understanding who the person is and what their needs are. What are the outside internalized environment that's causing those problems or symptoms or whatever you're dealing with. So your step 2 is to select oils that engage all 3 pathways. So the olfactory system. I highly recommend you study the sense of smell. It is such a powerful, powerful study. And what I mean by that is that it's actually therapy. When you know how the sense of smell, the science of smell functions, you can guide your treatments to work through your sense of smell. And I do treatments through diffusing. And I'll explain how you do that. I'm going to explain skincare through diffusing. And it's because I understand the science of smell. I'm not just working on emotions when I talk about the olfactory system, or even in the therapy of diffusing these aromas that are in the air. So when you're breathing these in, it's affecting mood, and it can affect mood. And here's another thing you need to understand about outside, inside out. Who is this person, and what is their olfactory memory and emotional memory to the sense in their environment? Every emotion, every memory has a scent attachment. I've expressed this so many times, and I just ask you, think about the videos that go off in your head when you experience a certain fragrance, right? Everybody has these. And this isn't only about essential oils. Every scent, synthetic, whatever, it doesn't matter. I know people who respond positively to the smell of gasoline because they remember family trips and, going to the gas station, pumping in the gas, smell of gasoline in the air. And they were fun trips, positive memories. So the smell of gasoline has a positive memory emotion. And it's powerful. So this is what I mean by affecting mood. So I'm not talking about the emotion here, okay? We usually talk about stress reduction and energizing and things like that. And, those, we need to diminish those in a way because those aren't the important things. I mean, yes, if you're dealing with stress, yeah, you want to reduce the stress, but it's all these other pieces that you need to understand. So when we're trying to think about what oils we're choosing, we want to think about the person's memory, emotional memory. And that's usually when we go, do you like this? Do you like this? I don't care. I shouldn't say I don't care. The first line in my courses, I pass oils around, right? And so, we have sticks and I'm going, here, smell this. Oh, before I let you smell it, let me tell you my first rule and pretty much only rule in aromatherapy. Every fragrance you smell, do not like it or dislike it. I have to say that because one of the first things that we do when we smell is, our brain is immediately going to what is it? Because the olfactory system is built around our environment. Is our environment safe? Is it dangerous? And we learn that through smell. And so when you smell, the first thing your brain's trying to do, the olfactory system, it's beyond the intellectual center. It doesn't go through intellectual first. It's direct response right to the limbic system, which is what the olfactory response is. So do not like or dislike the smell. I want you to feel it. And what do I mean by feel it? I don't know. Depends on what you feel. And so this is more about finding your relationship, your olfactory relationship with the oils that I'm using. Because I don't want to use oils that, kind of you back off or, it generally means that if you don't like it or if you're kind of hesitant and backing away from it, it's not a positive memory emotion. So I don't want to do that. I want to stay balanced in the positive flow of your olfactory memory and olfactory emotion. Okay. And so when I say mood, I'm talking about behavior as well. And because that sense of smell and your relationship with it, olfactory relationship with it, has to do with how you're going to behave in that, right? And so, I use smoke as an example. Somebody thought I was talking about cigarette smoke, but it's the same thing. If you go into and there's smoke in your kitchen, you don't think about go, oh, yeah, smell smoke. I know it means fire. By the time you figure it out, yeah, your toes are burning. And it's an immediate response. So your emotional memory, not just the memory of what it is, the emotional memory triggers a behavioral response that puts you into, in a way, fight or flight, because you're going to start looking, because now the intellectual center kicks in. Smoke means potential fire. I need to find it. I need to put it out. And so you go into action. Your olfactory system puts you into action. So this is so important. It's just so important to understand how the olfactory system works. Memory, in a way I talked about that, but memories can be, I said the car thing, but it's not always a memory when it's the mood and the emotion. But memories can be triggered, some positive, some negative. Here's where people don't get that the olfactory system, I can say these words, right? The olfactory system isn't just mood or emotion, stress, anxiety, feeling good. It's also a physical response. And this is when I talk about the triad. One of the important things we have to understand is that all three of these things I'm talking about happen at the same time. It's a simultaneous synergistic reaction, okay? And we cannot separate them. I'm going to show you no, I don't have that in this one, but I showed you in the last class the Venn diagram. where all of this overlaps. Okay, so you need to understand this is not separate categories. This is all one thing. Okay, these pathways, the triad, one thing. Even though it's a triad, 3 parts, but one thing, like a diamond, right? Diamonds is one thing with many facets. That's what this is like. So the nervous system. I always use the grapefruit example for this. Grapefruit, in a study I found, burns fat cells. How do you use it? I'd ask my clients or students, and they say, well, you'd put it in some juice or water and drink it. I go, yeah, that would work, but it's not the drinking it that made it work. The study points to inhalation. When you smell it through the olfactory bulb into what's called the limbic system, it triggers a response in the body, and it can be a physical response. When it's triggering that reaction through the central nervous system, the grapefruit, it's sending signaling that through the nervous system, it's burning fat cells. That is a physical response. That's not an emotional response. I can work on high blood pressure, heart rate, through the olfactory system because it works on the autonomic nervous function. One of the beautiful things that I like about working with essential oils is how I can reduce fight or flight. It's through the olfactory system, triggering a response through the autonomic nervous system, which raises parasympathetic activity, which is also another name, rest and digest. After you eat a meal and you find yourself getting kind of slow, it's because the autonomic nervous system kicks in, or parasympathetic function kicks in, slows the heart rate, slows the breathing, puts all the energy into digestion. When you use essential oils and you're in fight or flight in that hypersympathetic mode, the opposite of parasympathetic, and you smell the oils like cedrol in Virginia cedarwood, it triggers a response through the autonomic nervous system, creating relaxation in the body, slows down the heart rate, slows down the breathing. And you're not trying to become sedated. And that's another confusing thing in a lot of the aromatherapy industry is, well, this is sedating and that's energizing. Nope, I don't have that category. Because if you're in fight or flight, I need to calm you down. And if you're in constant fight or flight, you can drain your adrenals, meaning you're going to be in adrenal fatigue and meaning you're tired. And what's an aromatherapist mostly going to do? They're going to try and energize you. What are you going to do? You're going to drink coffee to stimulate yourself. What I do through the olfactory system, autonomic function, is I'm going to relax you. I'm going to use some of those sedative named oils when you're looking to be energized. The function is through the autonomic nervous system, I'm reducing the fight or flight response, and I'm allowing the adrenals to naturally regenerate. And so I'm letting the body bring back its energy, getting over the fatigue. So I'm not trying to sedate you. I'm trying to energize you by what would be considered sedating oils. It's an interesting way to work, but it just shows you the confusion that we have in essential oils. People try to be linear and a this for that kind of thing. It doesn't work. Now, pharmacology, next category. And in this next category, what's happening is we're dealing with cell receptors, lock and key. So we're dealing with physical properties. I have inflammation in there and digestion, but those are also controlled through the olfactory system. This is why I'm saying it's synergistic. All of these are happening at the same time and they overlap. The metaphysical, category. We're working on subtle energy, chakras, intention. Intention is a good one. In my Venn diagram, I show you the metaphysical category and then the olfactory category here. But what overlaps there is intention, because what they call verbal cues in olfactory science is I can tell you that an oil is sedating, and even if it's considered energizing, like peppermint or something like that, it can be sedating because I said so. So intention, in not quite that way, but if I'm doing a practice, and I'm going to show you this in the next couple of slides here, I'm going to show you some of the ways that I put formulas together. I have an intention. So I used in skincare atopic dermatitis. So in atopic dermatitis, my intention is to reduce the skin inflammation, repair the skin, and just all the things therapeutically, the symptom management that I need to do. And when I talk to you about that, I'm going to tell you these things. So in your mind, and this is mind body healing metaphysical category, because I don't know, does it really work? I'm going to say yes, mind body healing absolutely works. And so when I create a verbal intention, and you have that in your mind, and I'm directing you along with the odors, along with the touch and everything else, there's an intention that creates a healing property. Okay. This is the metaphysical category. Now, what I have here is I just, here's vetiver, using all three categories, because I want to show you how you use the oils now. Okay. How do the oils fit into what I'm talking about? And vetiver is a root oil. And, just from a metaphysical characteristic, and this is, I'm saying grounds emotions, but that's more of an olfactory. When you smell a root oil, it feels, all from the sense of smell, it feels grounding. So emotionally, if you're, kind of buzzy, and I use vetiver through the sense of smell, through the olfactory response, I'm soothing or grounding those emotions, that fiery kind of burn that's happening in your head, grounding that. Vetiver is very, very good at reducing inflammation. Part of that can be through the olfactory response, but there are physical properties, and I usually define it as lock and key. You have a molecule that's like a key. You have receptors on the cell that's like a lock. If the key fits, it creates a reaction through the cell. And with vetiver, that reaction is reducing inflammation. Now, the next word I have here is stable. I had to move on my screen. It was in my way. Stabilizing energy. What does that mean? In a way, it's the same thing as grounding. It's a root oil. So I recommend getting to know your plants as well as the oil that the plant comes from. Okay. And when you look at vetiver is a root. What's vetiver? What's the root doing? The root is grounding the plant. So from a metaphysical, having a relationship and understanding the personality of the plant itself, I'm going to incorporate that root system into the energetic properties of my formula. So grounding emotion, olfactory response, physical responses, reducing the inflammation or the pharmacological responses, and then stabilizing the energy is a metaphysical response. Went too far ahead. Okay. Here's what you want to do in step 3, because you're going to blend with the triad. When formulating using the Holistic Essential Oil Triad, what you're going to do is, how's the smell influence the symptom and the cause? So in the way that I just described vetiver, okay, so atopic dermatitis, it's commonly known that atopic dermatitis, and that's sort of an umbrella term for eczema and other, it's an umbrella term for irritated skin. And so we're going to look at that, and through our analysis, we find that symptom is caused through stress, anxiety, because stress, anxiety, fight or flight causes inflammation, cortisol, we know that. And it also can break down the lipid barrier, the very function that keeps your skin from having atopic dermatitis. The protective layer, the lipid barrier, can be compromised through stress, anxiety, and fight or flight. And so we want to understand, okay, we've got that symptom, and then we have the potential causes, and how can we resolve that with an olfactory response? Now, remember, olfactory is not just emotion. So I did say stress. So yeah, I want it through the olfactory system. I want to use oils that will reduce stress and anxiety. But I also want to reduce the fight or flight response, in this situation that I'm talking about, that I'm making up. So we're saying fight or flight is part of it. That's also an olfactory response, because like I said, directly through the sense of smell, you're balancing autonomic nervous function, a physical function in the human body. Physiological effects. So what are your physiological effects? That's, I keep using different names for that, because pharmacological, a lot of people don't understand that. So I'll call it physical or physiological. Physiological just means the activity in the body. okay? And when you use essential oils through all of these systems, olfactory, pharmacology, metaphysical, you are dealing with the physiology, the human physiology, the functions in the body that in a holistic model are not separate functions. The whole body functions together, okay? We need to keep that in mind as well. So from a physical level, what essential oils will match? With the vetiver example, I could use that in the atopic dermatitis example that I keep using, because vetiver grounds the emotions. So when I said stress, okay, the olfactory response there, yes. But I also said that vetiver works from a lock and key perspective, physical, pharmacological. So this would be a physiological effect, reducing inflammation, which is a symptom of atopic dermatitis. Next is, how are you using intention, spirituality, emotional healing connection? Emotional healing, I wanted to use that word because I was just going to say spiritual or energetic healing. And, these are difficult to define. Everyone has their own way of defining these things. So again, definitions are very important, that we're talking about the same thing. All right. And so when I talk about the metaphysical, which is what I'm looking at here, how do words work in this? And when you're working with the essential oil triad, we have language that also is part of our oils. And part of that is, this is stress relieving. This will help balance your heart. This will help you breathe deeper. These are intentions. This is working on a metaphysical level, even though there's an olfactory response and a physical response that goes along with, if I use an oil that I'm intention in telling you are going to do these functions, generally I'm going to use oils that have those properties, right? And if I don't want to, or I shouldn't say I don't want to, but sometimes I go off the map a lot, and I'll use oils that aren't necessarily defined for deep breathing or relaxation. And so when I explain my use of the oil, just because the literature has nothing to do, it doesn't say that, breathing, blah, 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 I'm going to tell you that. I'm going to work that into my system. I want you to be able to absorb on a metaphysical way, spiritual, energetic way, the words that I'm saying to make the oil work more effectively. There's a lot of different things that go into the metaphysical properties. I did a thing, it was for a spa, and they wanted a chakra blends. And so I made these blends, and when I was teaching about it, as I'm doing it, I got a lot of information, for years I've been hearing about, different people using for chakras and what oils they used and why, and all of it's really good. But basically, as I was thinking about, as I'm explaining it and thinking about what I'm explaining, I think, I think they're just making it up, because where is the science to back this up? And this is the thing about scientific studies. You may have science that backs up chakra blends, but how did they do that study? Did it involve intention? How do you measure chakras? There's all of these different things that go into this information that changes how we work. So as you pick oils for the Holistic Essential Oil Triad, you're doing it. So you get to make it up too. If it feels right, or if it's worked for you before, it doesn't matter if anyone else wrote about it. What matters is it working for you? That's what counts. I'm going to show you something that you absolutely cannot see because it's way too small. But let me see. I did put that in here, I believe. I did have it in here, but let me see. Where did it go? All right, let me pull it up here. It disappeared. What I'm going to show you is how to make this work. That's what I'm going to show you. And boom. Okay. You might need to kind of blow up your screen to do this. I know I do. The way I'm going to do it is by putting on my reading glasses. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is show you how I formulated using the essential oil triad. And what I'm doing here is, this could be for atopic dermatitis, okay? I didn't define it that way. But what I wanted to do is show you an example of, I have a client who is showing signs of inflammation, stress in the skin. And so there's probably inflammation going on, maybe redness, there may be some damage to the skin, broken skin, compromised lipid barrier. And these, I just described all that as an atopic dermatitis situation. But through my outside, inside out system, what I'm realizing is that I need to work on this person's emotion. And so that's my main focus. I actually do a lot of my skincare talking about the emotional properties of skincare. So think of skincare like when you're putting on your skin, putting products on your skin that have essential oils, you now become a walking diffuser. So diffusing becomes an olfactory response. So in every skincare formula, you have an olfactory response. Now, in this situation, what I'm looking at is I want to work on the emotional aspect of why this person has damaged skin. And so in this formula, I have, I need to blow this up a little bit more for me. What I have going on here is at the top, I'm writing olfactory, pharmacology, metaphysical, 1, 2, 3. So my first oil is Atlas cedarwood. Atlas cedarwood on a physical level has compounds in it that heal skin. So they're wound healing, they're anti-inflammatory, they strengthen the skin cell integrity. You see that at number 2. Number 1, cedarwood does help reduce tension and insecurity. It can be seen as reducing stress. Some people would put this as an energizing oil. And again, it really depends on your focus and what you're doing. But in this situation, I want to deal with emotion, and I'm dealing with the symptom as well. And so the emotion is being addressed through the olfactory system. Inhaling reduces tension and insecurity. Also through the olfactory system, I am dealing with central nervous system. So I'm reducing the tension in the central nervous system, which can also cause irritation topically, the skin. And so again, all three of these things mingle together. The anti-inflammatory, strength of cell integrity, that is the pharmacological property. And then emotionally grounding. Emotionally grounding is, I talked about the root and vetiver. When I think of a tree, the Atlas cedarwood oil comes from the tree. When I think of a tree, that stock is very strong and stable and tall and just gives the tree its integrity, its stabilization, and also its grounded ability. So when I think of this as an emotional, I'm dealing with the emotions here is what the theme was. Emotionally grounding is coming from that metaphysical property because, I don't know, I just made that up. A tree is strong, stable, and who's to say the oil is going to do that? I said it. It's my intention. It's a metaphysical property that I am personally bringing in to this formulation. Virginia cedarwood is the one I mentioned earlier, and I said cedrol, CEDROL, raises parasympathetic activity, meaning it reduces fight or flight. So this is through the olfactory system. I'm working on a physical property, the autonomic nervous system, but I'm reducing an emotional issue, which is anxiety and stress, which can also be considered fight or flight. So on a physical level, with Virginia cedarwood, it's wood from a tree, stabilizing, strengthening, same thing I just said. It's also, well, that's the emotional grounding part, but the anti-inflammatory and strengthens cell integrity is the same as the Atlas cedarwood. The emotionally grounding part was what I was just saying. It was stabilizing, tree, wood, all that kind of stuff. Now, if I have a client and through my outside, inside out evaluation, I find that, this woman, she had a good relationship with her dad and spent some time out in his tool shed, or wood shop. And the smell of sawdust has a very positive, emotionally positive reaction with this client. Cedarwood, the Virginia cedarwood, has that kind of sawdusty element to it. And you'll see I only have it at 3 drops because it can be overpowering. But if I find the person responds well to the sawdust wood smell, I might raise that a little bit more and reduce the Atlas cedarwood. Atlas cedarwood has more of that cedar closet fragrance, a little bit sweeter wood smell. Helichrysum, skincare. Helichrysum has to go in there. With the helichrysum, it does work through the olfactory response. I don't have a lot of literature on it, but I do find that it eases emotional tension, and it probably does have an effect on the central nervous system. And it really depends on where you're getting it from. I think the Corsican, when it comes from Corsica, it's going to have a better effect that way. When it's coming from Bosnia or Italy, it's going to have a little bit less of an effect on the central nervous system, but it's still there. It's still going to work, eases emotional tension. And as a pharmacological, this is actually the most powerful, best oil you could possibly use in skincare. Really good anti-inflammatory, and it's also skin cell regenerative. And so for wound healing, it is amazing how well and effective it is at healing a wound. And if you have atopic dermatitis, that is like a wound. It's broken skin, it's open skin. So you want to heal the skin and reduce scarring, or make sure there is no scarring. Helichrysum is the oil. So olfactory system eases tension, pharmacological properties, anti-inflammatory, cell regeneration. And then with helichrysum, when you look at some of the uses through historic, they would use helichrysum to promote self-esteem. Now, if I want to get into the chakras, then third chakra is about self-esteem. It's about the self. It's about the way you relate to your outside environment. And so, yellow oil relates to third chakra. And so self-esteem, there you go. How about that? Frankincense. Why did I choose frankincense here? Again, I'm staying on the triad. I'm explaining from how I chose these oils based on an evaluation, which I didn't give you a lot of detail on, but I'm giving you sort of the superficial. There is the fight or flight potential, anxiety, which is causing the atopic dermatitis. So frankincense is a really well-known spiritual oil. It's used a lot in spiritual practices and prayer, and they burn it in the churches. And so when you think about smelling frankincense, we can think of it as being a calming oil, but this one can float either way, okay? Just like I explained earlier, there's this sedative calming and things. I don't have that in my uses of essential oils. If I want to define it that way, I can, but I have a much more diverse way of explaining things in my way that I relax stress and anxiety. With frankincense, one of the things it does is it calms negative self-talk. That's why it's so good in meditation. A lot of people say, I can't meditate, I can't get quiet. Well, you don't really get quiet. You just, unless you're really good at meditation, you just want to ignore the talk mostly. And frankincense kind of softens that internal voice. So it can be there, but it's not interfering. And self-talk definitely interferes on our everyday 24/7 reality, right? So we always want to be aware of what are we saying to ourselves. And frankincense is a good oil for taking and easing that negative self-talk so you can get more control over your internal dialogue. And that's going to ease stress. That's going to ease anxiety. Like I said about the intense boss, that's really the really negative self-talk that in the way that they're internalizing that intense boss, right? because, it's like, what does it matter if this guy's intense? You have work, you have to do what you have to do, and you're gonna get through it. But if you internalize that in a negative way, that stresses you out. That causes anxiety. It causes fight or flight. Frankincense is a good oil to quiet monkey mind, is what they call it. Also, it does promote cell regeneration, and it is an inflammatory. You can see I'm kind of repetitive on that because when it comes to the symptom, the main thing I want to resolve is the inflammation and the broken skin. So cell regeneration, healing wounds. Frankincense, like I said, it's one of the most spiritual oils out there. Been used for centuries, and I think a lot of it is because it quiets monkey mind. But it's spiritually uplifting, whatever that means. And frankincense is an interesting oil. When we look at the chakras, it kind of goes root right up to crown. And so it's a very, very energetically balancing essential oil. Marjoram is a choice I made based on some of the studies I found where through the olfactory system, it does raise parasympathetic activity, which is very important in the structure of what I'm trying to do here. And so I have marjoram in there as an olfactory response. It's reducing anxiousness, which is similar to fight or flight, and raising the parasympathetic activity. So anxiety, stress, fight or flight. Through the olfactory system, I have the marjoram in there to help kind of ease all of that tension, emotional tension. And then it also is a good soothing oil. It's an anti-inflammatory, and just for irritated skin in general, it's a nice oil that kind of calms the skin down. And a lot of that could actually be done through calming the central nervous system. And then for spiritual, I did it, want to look around. I wasn't really familiar with what marjoram had been used for. And I found that it's used a lot for peace. Love and peace was one of the ways it was described, but a peaceful spirit. So not just, hey, peace, man, old hippie thing. It's a spirit, your energetic, consciousness, I guess would be the way to phrase that as well, to keep you peaceful, to keep you in just in a nice flow with the universe. Universe is a big thing. And, you're energetically just, kind of getting into a nice, smooth groove, okay? Which is going to help you emotionally, which is going to help you physically with the atopic dermatitis. Cape chamomile, one of my favorite essential oils is definitely Cape chamomile. And definitely eases nervous tension. This comes out of South Africa, so this is not the common Roman chamomile that you hear most about. I think this smells much better. It's a little bit fruitier. It's not quite as overbearing, which is what happens when you put Roman chamomile into a blend. It's just great for easing tension, nervous tension, and anxious feelings. And again, just from all that, you can tell it's going to reduce fight or flight. This is also a good anti-inflammatory because when you hear about chamomile, the blue chamomile, that's generally German chamomile, or it could be blue tansy. That blue compound is really great at reducing inflammation. Cape chamomile has a little bit of that in there, so you get the anti-inflammatory properties as well as reducing inflammation and irritation from calming the central nervous system. And then Cape chamomile, it could be, for communication when you think blue. So the chakras, you could say that it's going to help communication, which is very important for balancing emotions and balancing you physically. Opens the third eye. So these are all things that, I kind of looked it up and I get a sense when I think about how does this oil work. Rose is rose, and it's easier to say what rose doesn't do, which I can't think of anything that it doesn't do because it is one of the most complex essential oils, and it just has a beautiful way of bringing balance to everything. And so here I have, emotionally uplifting, calms, that's the olfactory, skin soothing and rejuvenating, anti-inflammatory, that's the physical. And then it stimulates the heart chakra and self-confidence. And so, it's the oil of love. Now, I say this story a lot. I had a student one time, every time rose went around, it would create anxiety. And so that was weird. Right? Because rose is a beautiful oil. It shouldn't cause anxiety. It should be the opposite. But something in her memory emotion had a negative association with rose. And these are things you need to pay attention to. Application, I will get into application in another slide. I do have another one. Let me see. Here. Let's go with this. Whoops. Bye. Pain and inflammation. Let's look at pain and inflammation. I'm gonna just breeze through this one. You can blow up your screen if you want to read this one. I don't want to take the time to go search for it. Hey, don't do that. So here we go with vetiver. As you know, for pain and inflammation. Now, pain and inflammation, you think physically, right? We're not talking about just physical. We need to pay attention to the triad, a synergistic, simultaneous activity. Okay, so vetiver is, it's considered calming, but it's a good antidepressant and anticonvulsive. That's more of a central nervous system thing through the olfactory system. It's an anti-inflammatory. And so when you have pain and inflammation, now where's the pain and inflammation coming from? So this again, what is it? Because stress, anxiety, fight or flight causes pain in the body. And so we have to know what we're dealing with. But I'm just going to give you an overview because this would work on any kind of root cause to the symptom, which is pain and inflammation. Anti-inflammatory, and it's just analgesic. It's very, very good for pain relief and for inflammation. There's the title, there's the oil. Could have just used that one all by itself. The black pepper, which is also a good anti-inflammatory, and having trouble reading my slide here. This one, it works on a psychological level. It's for acute stress is what I was reading. Some practitioners in French and Roman medicine were saying. And so again, I'm looking at the olfactory response and I'm seeing that this is working through the olfactory system, through stress, calming to the emotions or regulating the emotions, but then also having a central nervous system, autonomic nervous system response. The oil topically through the cell receptors is a good analgesic and also anti-inflammatory. And for the metaphysical, promotes it's just, peaceful. Another one gives you power, courage, stamina. Metaphysically, you find pepper has been used that way. I have helichrysum in this one too, because like I mentioned, helichrysum in the skincare, powerful anti-inflammatory. This is also a very powerful topical anti-inflammatory for pain. I think I told a story once, and I can't show you this because I can't show you this. It's gone. I had a bruise here and it was starting to grow and I never bumped it. There was no pain. It was just a bruise. So I got a little concerned. I got on the phone to call the doctor, make an appointment. And then I remembered, helichrysum gets rid of bruises. So as I'm talking to the doctor's office, making the appointment, I rubbed the oil on. By the time I was done with the making the appointment, the bruise was gone. And so I had nothing to show the doctor and he couldn't figure it out. And it tried to come back the other day. And so I'm not really sure, what happened to me. I could have something very strange that I can't figure out because helichrysum got rid of the symptom and maybe the root cause is still there. I hope not. Anyway, helichrysum, emotional balance, good anti-inflammatory, analgesic. And if there is any, if pain is from an injury, then and any broken skin, helichrysum also repair that. Blue tansy, I mentioned that when I talked about the blue oils, powerful anti-inflammatory. But it's also been found to reduce stress, anxiety. But this is actually, if the pain and inflammation is at all caused by allergens, and it's a histamine release, which causes inflammation, the camageline, the blue color, is a compound in the oil called camageline. That reduces the inflammation, but it also is antihistamine. So good for an allergic reaction, the blue tansy would be. So that's through the olfactory response. Analgesic, anti-inflammatory, and reduce rigid thinking. I forgot who I got that from. I liked it. And when I use German chamomile or blue tansy, I can kind of see the way, almost like when I talked about frankincense and monkey mind, the blue tansy kind of has that loosening of thought. So it's a nice oil. Cape chamomile, as I described in the atopic dermatitis, I could describe it in the same way here, with all the same properties. Wintergreen, very uplifting to mood. When you hear about mints, now wintergreen, peppermint, spearmint, 3 completely different compounds create what we're considering a mint smell. Menthol is in peppermint. Methyl salicylate is wintergreen, and the carvone is what's in spearmint. That's for all you chemistry people who like to know what compounds are working there. And those are the mint smells, all different. And so they all have a different reaction. So when I think about uplifting mood, or when people say peppermint's a stimulant, now one of the reasons why I think peppermint is a stimulant is because it irritates the nerve endings in the nasal passage. And I could do the same thing with a pin. If I poked you with a pin, you're going to be stimulated. So when you smell peppermint, that little bit of irritation is stimulating. But there's also the feel of mints. So wintergreen and spearmint have an uplifting quality just because of the feel of the fragrance, that friendly, fresh, clean kind of feeling that you get from these odors. So the wintergreen uplifting a mood. I did this in my pain blend when I made my formula. I was looking at the stress and the feeling of being in pain. So you do want to uplift the mood, because your mood is probably going to be pretty bleak when you're in a lot of pain. So you do want to get a little uplifting to there. Now the wintergreen is also a very, very powerful analgesic, good for pain relief. It does have some anti-inflammatory, but its main function in a blend like this is going to be as an analgesic, a pain reliever. Endurance, that's some of the things I found about wintergreen, the traditional uses. And so those are formulas. Those are how to do it. I'm kind of want to move forward here, because I'm going to go over a little bit, because I want to take some questions if you have any, but not yet. Let me move up here. What are the applications? Okay. So I started saying this before, but I wanted to wait till now. Is the application is yours. You're the therapist. You own the oils. I can teach you. It's sort of like, you have a car. The car is the essential oils. I'm the owner's manual. I give you all the stuff. I teach you which buttons to push, but you're the driver. Okay. You're the one that takes that information, takes those oils, and then they become yours. And this was what I learned from teaching at Bastyr University, a medical university, is I had naturopaths and MDs and traditional Chinese medical practitioners and herbalists and, different kind of energetic healers. And, I just had a mix of everybody. And how do I teach that diverse crowd? How do I teach them at the same time? And it was through this method I learned of teaching you how to learn about the oils, but then giving you the direction to turn them into your practice. So emotional skincare, if you're a skin therapist, you're working, you're doing this and, all the stuff that you do as a therapist, your touch is a big piece of your therapeutic work, right? Your intention, your words, big piece, the environment of the spa, big aspect in there as to what your therapeutic results are going to be. So when you're thinking about the application as part of how you're doing the therapy, you could do it through inhalation. Now I'm kind of going, okay, you have nervous system, mood, behavior. I've gone through all of these things. And it's going back to that triad again and understanding the triad. So your application is also going to address what your application is going to be. Application is also intention. So if I'm using skincare, I could do it without topical. I could help your skin through a diffuser. Won't be quite as effective, but I could do it. Because if most of the skin issue is due to mental activity, I do it through the olfactory system. But also, anytime you have a diffusion, you're getting some molecules on your skin, not enough to really treat the skin, but you know what? It'll work. And so in this, how you're choosing your application, it's yours. However you work with it, that's how you're doing it. Now, topically, pain and inflammation, yes, I'm going to absolutely put that on. And people think penetration. If you put it on the skin, like if I'm doing for digestion, actually a lot of digestion I do through the olfactory system. But I've given people like peppermint when I first started, because peppermint's good for digestion, they told me, and I put it on people's belly, and within seconds they're going, oh, it's amazing how fast that worked. And I'm thinking, no, it didn't. It must be placebo. There's no way that the oil penetrated, got into the capillaries, went through the liver, went through the heart, goes through the whole system and to your digestive system that fast. It takes at least 20 minutes for any molecules, which are not even that much, that absorbs. So receptors on the skin is where a lot of your activity is coming from. That's why it can be immediate, because the receptors can create a real immediate response. So topically, skincare, pain and inflammation, massage, whatever you're doing. But guess what? My skincare, I'm a diffuser. Once I put that on, the heat of my body is diffusing those molecules. So anytime you do a topical application, always consider the olfactory effect, because it's there. And that's what I was saying earlier about being an esthetician and doing a skincare treatment. If you personalize it, that person should take it home, because you've created an emotional memory bond with that fragrance. And also, if you did the therapy or the formulation in the way that I described, they bring that home, they're going to be smelling the oil. So you're going to be helping them emotionally as well as topically through the skin. There's also biophilic response. Biophilia is our genetic nature, or genetic need to be in nature, our love of nature. And nature is healing. They found this in forest bathing. People go into the forest, stress, all these other issues. The forest was healing. They found it was partly the essential oils. When they took hinoki from the Japanese forest and diffused it in rooms, they found that it boosted the NK cells, the immune function. So your immunity is being boosted through an olfactory response. Now, if you have that in your skincare, because immunity does have a lot to your effect with skin, then, it's just, how whole is holistic? This is endless. How many different therapies you can put into one application. Ritual energetic work. So if you work on chakras, or you work with pendulums or stones or anything like that, that's your work. Own it. How are you going to do that? It's really up to you, because that is something that is learned through experience. And a lot of practitioners in Reiki or stone therapy, whatever, right? So if you're into gems, there are books on it, and you most likely learned and read and found that the experience was similar. But you also find that you can work on different levels. You color association. There's so many different ways of working with so many different pieces of everything, right? So when I'm talking stones, a lot of different ways to look at that. How are you going to use your essential oils? Well, I can give you some direction. I can tell you the therapeutic properties. I can tell you the olfactory response, and then how you apply it becomes part of the therapy. You are the therapist. You are the driver of this car that we're giving you. So that's where you really want to go with understanding how you're doing all of this. This is absolutely a course. And, if you want to know more about this, I can give you 30 minutes. You want to get on my website to do that. If you do have a practice, if you are running a spa, I can come in and train your staff on these systems. I do sell kits with this. You won't find much product going on with me, because I'm more focused on education, but I do have it. I do sell products, and I can put systems together that you can use in your spa. I can do expert visitation as well. I can come in and work on clients through these systems, and through these systems, I can also train your staff on how to do all this stuff. And that I needed to remove this, not me. I was getting rid of me. Let me just pull up comments, because I want to look at the comments here. And I want to take any questions you guys might have. But yes, I also have, let me show you my email address in case that's your preferred way of getting in touch with me. So Yeah, if you want to just find me through email, support at Jim Harrison. On LinkedIn, just you can DM me. If go to my website, 30 minutes, no problem. Usually turns into a lot more time, and I still don't complain because I love talking to you guys. But I'm just going to go through here and check and see if we have any comments or any questions. Probota's going, is it aspirin? Methyl salicylate is not the, what is it? Salicylic acid is the aspirin, also from the birch tree, I think, or willow bark. And then it's that compound that Bayer aspirin changed. So it's now aspirin instead of from the tree. The the methyl salicylate behaves just like aspirin, though. I haven't done any pharmaceuticals in it's got to be 30 years. I haven't done any pharmaceuticals. And then helichrysum, the one I was talking about is helichrysum italicum. And let me see, any other, no other questions here going on. Blue yarrow is definitely a blue color. Yeah. So if you do have any questions, here's my email. If you do have any questions, 30 minutes, go to my website. If you want me to come visit your spa or resort, if you happen to be in Bali or Thailand or somewhere, Costa Rica, I really don't mind coming out and visiting. So I take the hard road. I taught in Hawaii for a long time, and I just said I'm willing to do the hard stuff. So yes, I will come out to wherever you are, and that's the way it will be. Anyway, I absolutely love doing this for you guys, and I'll keep doing one. I have another one coming up May 12th. I should have remembered that. May 12th. It's Monday. I'm doing it at 9:30 because I'm really trying to satisfy my international crowd. But 9:30, May 12th. And what I'm doing is the Holistic Essential Oil Triad and the Science of Smell. I'm just so blown away and fascinated by the science of smell in relationship with essential oils. But absolutely appreciate it. Thank you so much, you guys. And I will see you next class.